live. Now, there is less than 6 hours to go until the summer football transfer window closes. It shuts an hour later in Scotland. Now, the Premier League clubs are upset that they're losing money due to the absence of fans. However, there's still been quite a bit of money spent this summer. We're still waiting for news of deals. Edison Cavani to Manchester United, Thomas Partey to Arsenal. We'll bring you those deals as and when they happen. The biggest deal so far today is Ben Godfrey leaving Norwich for Everton for £25 million. He's a defender. Let's speak to the Chief Executive of the Carteret Financial Group, James Powell, who's been looking at the figures this summer for the BBC. Hello, James.
Hi, Tony. Happy 6th anniversary, by the way.
Thank you. At least someone remembered. Thanks, James. Thank you very much indeed. My other half is bewildered by all the fuss because she hadn't got a clue.
No, I didn't. I'm so delighted with my Prezi, though.
Nevertheless, James, so we were going into this transfer window and there's a lot of speculation that fees will be down, clubs wouldn't be spending the money, but has the same old panic button been pressed? How much money has been spent compared to previous years?
Yeah, it's certainly interesting, Tony, and it's certainly different to what we consider to be the 5-year average. I mean, the total amount spent by the Premier League clubs so far, so this is total spend, is 1.15 billion, which is a lot of money, but it's actually 12% down on what we would anticipate from the 5-year average. And that's nothing compared to the change in La Liga and Bundesliga, who are almost 50% down on their total spend. And we're also seeing, actually, that the income from player sales is also considerably down. In the Premier League, it's down 30%. So there's something clearly different in the transfer market this summer transfer window from previous 5 years.
Do we know, James, whether they collectively are buying less players or the same amount of players for less money?
Yeah, the volume's down as well. So they're buying less players, but they are paying more for some of those players. So I suppose you could use Chelsea as an example of that. They've spent a lot of money in this transfer window, and their total expenditure is actually about 60% up over the 5-year average. But then again, they were get to a transfer embargo a couple of seasons ago, so that will have affected the figures. But there's one or two anomalies, but they are generally spending less money so far. I mean, we've still got just under 6 hours to go, but we don't anticipate there's going to be any massive transfer fee deals done.
There are those clubs, as we know, like Manchester City, who appear to have bottomless pockets. But other clubs, it's always a balancing act, isn't it, buying new players? Is it more of a gamble now, James, because the future is so uncertain to spend? I mean, I think of my club, Burnley, they've not spent a bean at all. And I know they're conscious about the future of the club. Who knows what might be round the corner? Are we seeing some clubs gamble this year by spending money to try and stay up with this extra level of uncertainty?
Well, it's interesting you ask that, because you could look at clubs like Crystal Palace, for example, and Wilfried Zaha. And there's still some speculation about whether he would go at some point today, but I can't imagine that Steve Parish for a minute would let him go, because Steve Parish and the club value him so highly, because they think he's the one guy that can make the difference between them staying in the Premier League or going down. So I think there is an element of hanging on to players. And actually what we've seen is that we've seen contract extensions for players. So this is all part of that player transfer strategy. Are up 35% in the Premier League and 30% in La Liga and 30% in the Bundesliga. So that would suggest that there is a change in the player transfer strategies of the clubs. They're seeing much more value in use for the players than the value in exchange. And I just heard slightly earlier about Eric Garcia and whether he might leave Manchester City because he's in the final year of his contract and go to Barcelona. But Manchester City have put out a statement and said, well, look, we've worked out that the objective value of this player to us for that season is more valuable than selling him for £15 million. So I do think there is a change in the transfer strategies of certain clubs. And other clubs, I think, have just tightened the purse strings completely. Yeah, Real Madrid have spent nothing. They're 100% down on their usual expenditure over the last 5 seasons.
For those clubs in the Premier League who've not signed many players or any players at all, James, there is a bit of hope, as we mentioned, because the deadline to buy clubs from the EFL, players from the EFL, is the 16th of October. But there has been price inflation there, hasn't it? It's very expensive to buy domestic players.
Yes, I think over the last few seasons, domestic players, because of the rules and regulations, have become relatively more valuable, and it will be interesting to see. It's almost a long tail, isn't it? Just to see what happens between now and the 16th of October. It's unusual, and I think there are some players in the EFL that I think will be attractive to Premier League clubs. So I think they're almost doing this in two stages. So we may end up actually spending, or the Premier League clubs in particular, spending more money this season than over the 5-year average. But we won't know for sure until the 16th.
OK, we'll leave that there, James. Thank you. James Powell there from the Carteret Financial Group.